Hello, everyone. Good evening, and thank you so much for coming to tonight's event with Jenny Browne. Also, kudos to you all for choosing poetry over the State of the Union address. I feel very confident you have made the right choice. Um, so this is I'm been looking forward to this event for a long time. It's so wonderful to have Jenny Browne back here on campus, but here to read for us. I first met Jenny in 2016 when we were on a panel together in San Antonio. Afterwards, offered to take me to a barbecue place for a quick lunch. What she didn't tell me, though, is that she would be taking me to the platonic ideal of all barbecue joints, located in gorgeous Texas countryside, complete with picnic tables and a flowing river. It's like picture Valhalla with a food court. This place would be there front and center, or at least that's how I remember it. Our so-called quick lunch turned into a 3-hour gossipy feast, and I left Texas knowing I had met a new poet partner in crime. Since arriving at Smith, I knew Jenny was a poet I wanted to invite for our reading series, but the time frame for that plan became clear once her daughter, Lyda Martin, enrolled at Smith and, of course, took the campus by storm. I love the idea of bringing Jenny to read here during Lyda's time at Smith, and in almost 30 years of the Poetry Center's existence, this has never happened before. A parent and student matchup. I'm happy, I'm so delighted this worked out. And I'll just say one more thing about it. Many times we try to align a poet's visit here to campus with a new book publication, but Jenny's new book, I Am Trying to Love the Whole World, will be published by BOA next fall after Lyda's graduation. Scheduling a visit for fall of 2026 was never an option. Lyda trumps book release every time, but I'm so glad that we'll be able to hear some of Jenny's fabulous new work tonight. I was lucky enough to get a sneak peek at a manuscript copy of I'm Trying to Love the Whole World in manuscript form. And I've been just so moved and inspired by those brilliant poems. So I want to urge you all to set your calendars. Remember to track this book down when it comes out. It is gorgeous, it is brilliant, it is truly moving. I'm really excited to have it in print and in my hands. So here's the way tonight will work. Lyda will introduce her mom. And then Jenny will read us all poems. Then I'll be in conversation with Jenny up here on stage with questions offered by my Reading Contemporary Poetry class. And then after that, there'll be a book signing right down here, as always, at the purple tablecloth. And on that note, I want to thank Broadside Books for selling Jenny's book there in the back. I also want to thank Tom Kleitis, as always, for streaming tonight's event. Thank you all for those of you who are joining us online. Looking ahead, for students, this might seem a long way away with midterms in the mix and then also spring break. But our series will resume again. It's actually 1 month from tonight. Claire Wamenholm will be here on Tuesday, March 24th. And if you're here and you are not on our mailing list and wish to be on our mailing list, there's a QR code also in the back at the table with the stickers, and you can sign up for information about all of our reading series as well. And other announcements. My English 112 class, I think you know what to do now. The QR codes will be posted towards the end of the event, and you just need to scan those. If you have any issues, come see me or find Nicole, and we can figure that out if you have any tech issues, but hopefully all of that is running smoothly tonight. I just want to thank you all again for being here tonight and for tuning in online as well. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Lyda Martin. So I'm sure many of you know this. You know so much more about Lyda than anything I'm going to say here. But Lyda Martin is a senior English lit major and philosophy minor who enjoys running. I think that's an understatement, I think. Reading and spending too much time on Pinterest. She is currently completing an English honors thesis project on contemporary literature of the Black diaspora and looks to attend a master's in English graduate program this fall. She is also a captain of Smith's track and cross country team, and this is really badass, recently set the school record in the mile by 0.09 seconds. Please welcome Lyda Martin.
Wow, this is pretty cool. I see like some people from my classes and some people from my team. So when Matt first sort of brought up the idea of me introducing my mother for this event, my first thought was, oh wow, so now all of my Smith acquaintances are really going to understand why I am the way I am. Yeah, it's just like a lot on my shoulders being a poet's daughter. I think I think being a poet's daughter is honestly one of the reasons why I came to Smith, or the reason why I came to Smith. When I was figuring out where to go to college, my mom and I flew here from Texas, and we came to Smith on Valentine's Day, and we took a picture under the portrait of Sylvia Plath in the Poetry Center. It was all very cinematic. I was like, wow, I'm gonna go here. And we bought too many books at Broadside Bookstore, which is pretty funny. It feels really full circle for my mom to return on another February during my senior spring to read her own book of poems, which is coming out soon. It's called I Am Trying to Love the Whole World. I think for me, being a poet's daughter means that for every holiday or birthday, instead of asking for a gift, my mom told me I had to write her a poem. No, I'm being completely serious. It also means that I was raised to pay deep attention to language. I think that it also means that when I came out to my mom as bisexual in the 6th grade, first she went, "You're not sexual, you're in 6th grade." And then after like thinking for a while, she close read me and she said, "Honey, are you having sexual feelings?" um, and although I am no longer bisexual, my mother's love for close reading and her tendency to ask deeply hard questions and her openness to my lesbianism, I think are all things that have landed me here at Smith. And I guess on this stage. My mother always used to tell me that motherhood was her favorite out of many jobs, but I think it's only fair that I get to tell you about her excellence in all the other jobs that all the other hats she wears. So forgive me if I sound like I'm bragging, even if I am a little bit about my mom. So Janie Browne, she's right there. She's a professor of English and creative writing at Trinity University in San Antonio, Texas, but she is also an honorary professor at Queen's University in Belfast, Northern Ireland. She's the author of 5 books of poetry, which includes what they're selling outside, which is Fellow Travelers, New and Selected Poems, Volume 17, which is in the Texas Poet Laureate series. And she's also the author of I Am Trying to Love the Whole World, which, as Matt said, is forthcoming from BOA. Her poems and essays have been published in many places. This includes, but is not limited to, the American Poetry Review, Gulf Coast, Oxford America, the Academy of American Poets, Poem-A-Day, Poetry Magazine, The Nation, the New York Times, and The Slowdown. So Jenny Browne, my mother, is a former James Michener Fellow at the University of Texas. She has received the Cecile Helmley Memorial Award from the Poetry Society of America. She has received a National Endowment for the Arts Fellowship in Poetry, and not 1, but 2 Fulbright Fellowships to Northern Ireland from the US-UK Fulbright Foundation. She did pull me along to one of those. She served concurrent terms as the 2016 to 2018 City of San Antonio Poet Laureate, while also being the 2017 State of Texas Poet Laureate. In 2023, she was inducted into the Texas Institute of Letters. So I really hope that you guys will enjoy hearing about Texas and Ireland and all of the things and feelings in between those two places. So Mom, if you'd like to join me on stage, I think it's time for some poems.
If I can get through this without crying. Hi. What a gift. To get to be your mom and to get to be here tonight. I'm going to set a timer here. I do remember that day when we showed up to Smith on a February 4 years ago, and Lida went out for a run and got lost and got wet and got cold and came back to the hotel and said, I want to go here. And here we are. I want to say thank you to Matt, to Jen, to Kate and Sadie, the interns at the Poetry Center. It was great to have Ellen Watson, the former poetry director, here, and also friends who came from new friends and old friends. Just, yeah, I'm feeling quite moved to get to read you some poems. I thought that I would read a few older poems, bring a little bit of Texas here from this book that's here now, which is called Fellow Travelers, and it is it's a new and selected volume that has poems from my first 3 books and then a few new ones. Yeah, because you can't see my face. How's that? That's good. One of the things that Lida has inherited from me, I think, in addition to A Way with Words, is an inability to sleep. She came home from a hot date the other night and said, no matter what time I go to bed, I still get up at 7:30. So I said, yeah, well, you're my kid. But so this is an old poem about not being able to sleep, but it's also about being a mom. It's called Lullaby. What makes 2 eyes close, a small body grow so much heavier in sleep? The winter garden at dawn, hourglass-shaped, gourds no one remembers planting. In the place where waiting meets morning, leaves are shaped like the vowels in evergreen, fallen barbs of memory. What's the first lie you will tell your child besides everything will be okay? 40 steps from back door to gate, 40 verses to the song with no words but please. And the last lie you remember? Feel its surface like a shard of glass lost in the heel for years, flesh toughened where it touched. There were 4 mittens and a bowl full of mush. There was an old woman whispering, hush. Were there 3 older brothers fed to the alligators? And the cauliflower you ate so as not to join them? Give the brothers names, like Rutabaga, Fontanelle, and Dublin. Live another minute on that island of tender, pulsing between the shifting plates of her small skull. And those shiny black crows fighting in the distance, tell her that's wet paint, dancing. I've heard from the class that I have a lot of birds in my poems, so we'll see how that goes. I'm going to read you another poem from this book. A million years ago, when I was an undergraduate women and gender studies and sociology major, and a long way from being a poet, but I think I always was. I always was interested in sound and in attention, and I had a textbook called The Presentation of Self in Everyday Life. Any sociology majors out there? This Goffman. So this textbook was basically took the metaphor of theater for how we interact with other people, and this idea that we're always performing and managing people's expectations. And it was in 1956, so it was kind of the first book that ever really made the case that identity is not fixed; it's performed and formed in social encounters. And I didn't become a famous sociologist, but I did keep your textbooks, kids, because one day maybe you'll get a poem inspired by it. But this poem is 4 little vignettes that kind of take some of these ideas from this textbook, and it starts with a little epigraph that I'm always tempted to leave every time I go stay in an Airbnb. It's by W.I. Thompson, another sociologist, and it says, "We live by inference. I am, let us say, your guest. You do not know, you cannot determine scientifically that I will not steal your money or your spoons." This is in four short parts. 1, the last Halloween he was among us, Uncle Win dressed up as a fallopian tube, wrapped in elastic bandage from ankle to chest, with hands clasped together mid-thigh, where they cradled a plastic sack full of hard-boiled eggs, dropping them one at a time hourly as he moaned, "Fertilize me, for God's sake, would somebody please?" The gray papier-mâché ovary took days to dry before he duct-taped it to his head. A sign above Highway I-10 shouts life, by which it implies rhythm. A heart-shaped pattern we might scan begins at 18 days, but doesn't advertise when a man might decide to terminate his own, or what he might happen to be wearing. 2. At Barton Springs, behind her, a man removes and refolds the pink meat of his sandwich. By this he means, sweetheart, yeah, you, older than my mustache, younger than my bunion. How great, he tells us again, it used to be in Austin. From the free side of the depths, the dogs and topless laughed loudest. The co-ed with night open across her chest has freckles she wasn't born with. Those of us who paid $3 to sink and surface feel a smidgen fenced in, but it's not so bad here. Watching the downside of sunset slump red-faced against the cement wall, like that tasered teenager on YouTube. Really, not bad at all. 3, on earth as it is in the bedroom, conversations involving over-communication of some facts, under-communication of others. And at the barbecue, drinking Shiner Bock with the Defense Department translator, her nose stud a spark in the porch light, her reaching for another beer, saying, sometimes you have to remind yourself that this guy you're talking for, so polite, nice and all, he once sent a woman her husband's head in an ice chest. 4, and when the main character says, I forgot myself, she does not mean bodily. Rather, she has just made a relatively unrehearsed verbal assertion, such as, I love cucumbers, but they make me repeat like a howitzer. Or conserve energy, screw and nurse at once. Even, dear stranger, oh honey, mess up my hair and thumb me till I hum. According to the survey, we say we are happy. A full 3/4 of us say we are. I'll read one more from this, and then I'll turn my attention to some new stuff. I was the Poet Laureate of Texas some years back, and I had a really incredible opportunity to have have a residency, a national parks residency in the Guadalupe Mountains National Park, which is this beautiful kind of island in the middle of the desert, right up against the Permian Basin, which is sort of the biggest and most prolific oil field in the world. And it's kind of crazy because you're driving through frack land, and then you come across this coral reef and this ancient Permian Sea. And it was a beautiful place, but also a kind of harrowing place. And I was reading a lot of Dante, and I got this great idea that I was gonna do this sort of Dante-esque poet laureate road trip from the highest point in Texas, which is Guadalupe Peak, to the lowest point, which is sea level at Corpus Christi. And I was gonna write a sonic crown, sort of formally connecting, it's a better idea than it sounds like, formally connecting sort of the Permian Basin to the, and the disaster of unmitigated fossil fuel usage through the sonnet. What could go wrong? But I thought I would just read you just a couple of those. They are named for these towns that I passed through, and they began with kind of a subheading of a line from Dante. So I'll read this one that's from Pecos text. Anyone from Pecos? It's a real shithole, you know. Seriously. But if near dawn the dreams we have are true, Pecos. 2 trucks stuck between Pecos and death makes for an uphill line to begin again. By side they grind their teeth, and we shall not be moved. If then I felt we were all just waves, that vague and that abstract, or there ought to be a law against motion sickness, but we're born with it. Landscape as a list of future targets. The golden-cheeked warbler didn't have time to pack. And if, as Dogen writes, we should not view ash as after and firewood as before, what time is being told and told but not listening? What would it be to die or stay alive, albeit fearlessly? If it already happened, it should not be too soon. Ozona. To die or stay alive, albeit fearlessly, my mind must stop revising that great hawk into a killing machine. I don't mean to sound so apocalyptic, but I remind my students they can't put a drone in their poem without some blood on their hands, or leave out the man scanning his screen for heat. It's cold in Ozona, but I meet the happiest people in the world also heading east. Nothing to do there but fish. Birds of a feather, gods of wind, I am supposed to warm to your slow-turning blades of war. Mine, not oars. Arms grow sore, wishing our species better metaphors. Here's the last one. We made wings of our oars for our fool's flight. Seminole Canyon. Wishing our species better metaphors, I consider the author of Borders and Fear standing up the slumped horizon. The Anthropocene silent auction is now closing. Author of Brushing Peach Pie from the Geologist's Beard. From here, we can see Smog hiding one of her children behind her back. The other approaches the canvas. Our land turns blue, our eye black. Each refugee takes her sky's temperature. Author of those 2 white horses feeding at the Valverde County line, reminding us of nothing. It was summer, and it was never their job to humanize the land. So, That's a little Texas for us Texas natives. As Lida mentioned, I split my time these days between San Antonio and Belfast, Northern Ireland. And here during my jazz interlude in the middle of this reading, I thought I would. I've been working on just a couple little poems that are prose poems, and they're love poems. And I'm sort of working on a new collection, and it's kind of fun with the people who are used to reading poetry to try a few new things. So these are, what's interesting about these, I hope, is that they are love poems, kind of long-distance love poems, sort of mediated through the poets who I read the most, Seamus Heaney, and also some of what seem to be kind of the patron saints of the Pioneer Valley, a little Dickinson, a little Mary Oliver. So I'm just going to read a couple of these. They're quite short. This book right now, I'm calling it The Troubles, if you've heard of them. Kind of tongue-in-cheek, but also maybe it's not a bad title for a book of love poems. It's you, blackbird, I love, Seamus Heaney. It's you, black car door opening so as to become another wing flapping 3 times. I ask the sky to stop. It's you, all the birds I've kissed, and you, the words I misspell. Again, it's you. Chapter 7, I fell asleep reading. You, the trash bin rolled forth blearily. I will need a new way to explain it. Tonight, I told the truth, then ate cheese and onion crisps in the dark. Sometimes just the melody gets me. 2 seabirds fighting over the wing of a third, the most Belfast image you'd ever heard. 10 times a day, just thinking of how you say the word sound with your actual mouth. It's you, first torn blue bit between bricks, you as well, meaning me. I ride into the tunnel like a sigh. There's a bird in that one too, isn't there? This is called You Do Not Have to Be Good. Begins that terribly famous Mary Oliver poem. Someone has, in black Sharpie, on the doorframe, low down, inside Marfa Burrito, written out entire. And it has always felt to me some famous poems, like some famous people, say Selena and Anthony Bourdain, their beautiful dead faces are here too on the wall, remain happy to see us, but not this poem, no. This one seems weary of me squinting closer to read aloud for perhaps the 1,000th time as I untangle a lone goat head thorn from my sock, thinking of a man I used to work with. He was called Casey and seemed to believe himself patiently waiting in an immense field of sunflowers for his rightful reign, instead of standing before the copy machine making another thick PDF for the sour medievalist. That was the look in his eye, saying, I am Casey, here today to catch the deluge of your dumb human pain on my great flower face as the copy machine flashed through what used to be trees. And every time we passed in the hall, he'd shout, hey, Browne, you're doing a great job, even though I was not. Not even close. I had not slept in nearly 2 years, truth be told. My hair could have been on fire, and I'd have said, fine, everything is fine. My kind father would keep on being dead, and I would begin telling a lie that would burn my mouth so nothing tasted right for such a long time. To say I could love a woman like this, could this particular one, in fact? Her matted coyote hair sparked with late winter sun, her wiping a smear of chorizo grease from my chin with her damp thumb, a galaxy of tiny cat claw holes in her yellow wool sweater, all the while explaining something about the end of time. How can it be found in physics? How one could in fact tumble off the edge of everything and there would be time itself, waving hello, goodbye, hello, just like Casey in his plain black skateboarder shoes, ollieing off a kicker, only he could see how it always sounded easy enough to just love what you love. Is it still called light if we can't see it coming yet? I'll read one more of these rambling momentum prose poems. We still have time for a few questions from the audience. That's the title, not, not the beginning of the poem. We still have time for a few questions from the audience. When the golden retriever from the forest at full speed, mouth packed with leaf rot and tennis ball, has emerged, offering no answer beyond mine. But of such sure possession, what do I know? It wasn't like we shared a blanket. Wasn't like I stood to command your hands for my country and my country alone. Still the swollen river does not hesitate, knowing the future becomes a future by remaining open-mouthed. We stumbled outside, blinking hard as a sunbeam considered her next move. I am writing this in blue-black ink on the back of a used envelope like Dickinson. Her editors changed the line breaks again, one comparing her handwriting to fossil tracks of birds. What does that even mean? Who is speaking to whom, and for what ostensible purpose? Do you remember that lecture on letters and war and letters and love, barely touching arms in the dark? The day stays gray as a stone. The dog's owner gurgles hard on his vape. Someone is breaking down cardboard boxes in the alley. The whole sky barking rain. Well, that was fun. It's kind of scary to read new things. I'm going to finish by reading some poems here from I'm Trying to Love the Whole World. This is a new book, as you heard, coming out in September. And it's elegiac. Many of the poems came out of the death of my closest friend, who was a painter, and kind of trying to speak to that. But I think it also came out of my own kind of loss, I think, of language and of reading. During COVID, there was, I think for a lot of people, our minds changed. I think it became, for me, difficult to focus in the way I had. And this would have been in 21, 22, and I was stuck. I was stuck, and about that time, the great Polish poet Adam Zagajewski passed away. And I don't know if any of you know his poem, You Must Praise the Mutilated World. It's a beautiful poem, and it seems to come out when there's trouble, and it seems to be coming out a lot these days. But one day after Adam died, I read the poem, and I really hadn't been able to write anything in a long time, and I kind of I said, I'm trying, Adam, I'm trying, But I don't know how, I know some of you are in this poetry class, and maybe this is the first and last time you'll engage with poetry in this way, and I know some of you have been writing a long time, and I know for me, giving myself little assignments when I'm stuck has always helped. So I sat down for 100 days, and I decided, okay, I'm just gonna begin with this sentence, I'm trying to love the whole world. And see what happened next, because or until or although, because it's impossible, but at the same time, I think, when you're writing elegies, you sort of have this idea of like you can write through grief to consolation, or grief to not want to be consoled, or grief to deeper grief, or maybe to me, I think it was a grief to a kind of practice of attention or love, because in many ways, I think, I became a poet and not a sociologist because I never found something I liked doing quite as much as discovering something I didn't know I had to say. And kind of writing these poems helped me remember that. So I'll read a few of them. This is called But You Can't Keep Everything. I'm trying to love the whole world, but you can't keep everything. You can hover only between the sleepless rooms, repeating more slowly and in alphabetical order the names of birds. Albatross, bunting, cormorant, dove. Albatross, bunting, cormorant, instead of your dead friend, you mean? Mean egret, mean grackle, mean humming. Keep humming, keep jay. Say kingfisher, say loon. Say, despite the raccoons screeching all night like blown timing belts high in the trash trees, while the skeletal fence cats cage match over moonlight. Mean mocking, mocking, mocking. And still, we haven't finished cleaning out your studio. Your desk drawers full of heart-shaped catalpa leaves and fist-sized acorns. Your sketches of standing ovations for melancholic rock stars, chain-sawed charm bracelets, and the chiseled gray mountains of Spain, over which we had yet to fly. And your laugh like an ambulance, and your laugh like the elephant grass. And so I try writing another unreasonable elegy. I'm trying to love the whole world. And so I try writing another unreasonable elegy for the future. But it's time for breakfast. A buffet of DIY waffles, soft bacon, and bladders of sweet juice levered from a machine that glows all night. I wanted the green glass of that distant city to smell me on its chest. I wanted both great armies to follow the flight paths of migrating cranes. I wanted to replace the gold-plated Ganesh out in the lobby, remover of obstacles, knowing it would soon enough be stolen again, tossed off the bridge where the fish-eyed children gathered to debate their passwords. I wanted to change my tongue, to croon a little landslide like we do when we're alone. I wanted to know what blood-warmed meat once heaved itself around the clean bones I found halfway down the canyon. But somebody ate somebody was as far as I got. So interesting to read these now and think about, that idea. I can say it to my students all day long. If you know where you're going and what the poem's going to say, why bother? But when you don't know where you're going, it's pretty scary, but it's pretty interesting. Kind of where you end up. I'm going to read a couple more here, and then we'll call it good. But this is many of the poems in the book are also ekphrastic about visual art, but some of them also engage with music, engage with Texas, and engage with our country. This is called Listening to the First Movement of Dvorak's Piano Quartet at the community pool the night after the Uvalde school shooting. I was thinking the music moved in stops and starts like children chasing fireflies. Then I heard it stare empty as the lifeguard chair. A boy leaned in, opening his mouth to release into his mother's palm the blue-green gum from which he'd chewed the sweetness loose. It would still be warm for a minute or two, is the kind of thing one thinks in times like these. So I try to let the strings play more gentle attention to anything. The elderly regulars surfacing pale as ravioli, the stoned tailback inside the snack bar, carefully cheesing one nacho chip at a time. But mostly to the rapturous face of the toddler who watches me watching her run back and forth in the grass, fast as she can, away from nothing. Am I good on time? I'll read 3 more. Okay, I'm good. Sorry. Okay, I'm good. I totally neglected to set the timer, so I'm looking at all right, I'm good. Just give me the like, I'll read a few more. This is called, where'd it go? Rereading The Tempest. I think what it's about is obvious. I hope what it's about is obvious. But you know, is it? I mean, I think, is it? I mean, poems have, you know, I think they have the little about, which, as we like to call it, which is, you know, the content or the subject, sitting at the hospital where my best friend is dying at 4:30 in the morning to get coffee, and where I spent a lot of time that fall. And I was reading The Tempest, but at the same time, the big about is sort of, I think, also the larger universals and the larger tensions that enter the poem when you sit down to make it. So this is both about The Tempest and I hope about some other things too. Rereading The Tempest. Inside the tiny Starbucks over by the hospital, the one that opens at 4:30 a.m., who had, no doubt, some noble creatures in her. Doubtful this morning, with the men on either side of me breathing hard, audible porn on their painfully slow-charging cell phones. Every now and then, one rubs small circles on his kneecap with the middle knuckle of his middle finger. Grab a little goodness. Grab something savory. Each wave remains a beginner, and the sensitive brute in the play is afraid of hedgehogs. I've spent half my life peering down dark streets for some place to please be open. There is no reason to imagine it differently than you imagine it. Everybody on the ruined ship believes itself the only one who survived. I'm excited for all these pages to be in an actual book. All right, we will. Here we go. This is called America's Got Talent. Have you heard? It's been really interesting to be living half the time in Ireland, which is a beautiful place full of beautiful people, and to kind of be thinking about, you know, when I first went over there, people thought, oh, isn't it violent, isn't it this and that, and certainly they've had a very complicated history, but you know, I was recently with some poet friends, and we were talking about that, and someone was asking them, how do you repair, how do you create conversation across, when people can't agree on the same story, or the same history, and how do you repair political violence, sectarian violence, and one of the poets said, you don't let it start, and so it's been good to kind of look back over here. So anyway, this poem is a bit about that, I think. America's Got Talent. A one-night stand in Jackson. The soft opening outside Cheyenne. That laughing gull on Miami Beach and the ampersand tattoo you didn't get in Portland. You kept forgetting which part of your body you were supposed to use for lifting whole seasons of unpredictable allergies and rage. You've practiced steering into the skid. You're only 9 miles from Bless, Texas, but you did not arrive here by machine. You did not come to carry that gun. Wet trees and idling trucks, a whole shelf of expired pain relief. Back in the back, and behind that, the game where you keep paying a silver hook to drop, grasping for the hind of some bright, half-buried animal. We keep saying now more than ever, but I've never seen anyone leave this part of the country with anything but stone fruit or ash on their hands. I'll read 2 more. This one's for Lida. Maybe it's a little more hopeful than the last one. It's called When America Cuts My Daughter's Hair. When America cuts my daughter's hair, every chair in the strip mall salon where she rents a little space reflects another face ready to make a change. The mother next to me gripping an ad for the full Hollywood wax. And here too, the needed graffiti, don't do drugs, be sad. They'll grow back. My own mom on the bangs I butchered more than once. Do you think America is pretty? My skinny blonde girl who never really needed to ask if she was asks me. Later, as we walk 2 more hot city blocks, because by now we've chopped the pecans to protect the power lines. A Pierce Chicana with one side of her own dew done in deep brown waves, the other buzzed tight and dyed a bright chemical green. America fits the description. And when she's done, holds up her small mirror in the big one, turning my kid around so she can better see herself. You can call me Erica, she says, if you like. But we like America better here. And this is the last one I'll end with. The one I Am Trying to Love the Whole World poem in the book that is actually titled, I Am Trying to Love the Whole World. I am trying to love the whole world is such a public display of affection, a flex even. One, the lone magpie staring back from the backside of a badly shorn sheep finds suspect. I flap my arms and blink 3 times. Bad luck to glimpse just one. Magpie being the only creature rumored to have refused the ark, preferring to perch high on the mast and curse the rain. I, too, keep rewinding my mixtape of the plague years until I can hear it snap like a tendon or a tent pole. My country keeps on hammering itself into softer ground with a rock and yet the sound of wind softly shaking the stars awake. My world, I have missed your mouth, your morning breath coming round the wild garlic, your fat lilacs forgetting to be the flower of death. Thank you so much. Really, it's a pleasure. I think we have a shift change here, and then I have to answer why there's so many birds in my poem. Look at these guys.
That mic's on. Thank you again so much for that just incredibly beautiful reading. Can we get one more round of applause for Jenny? That was so beautiful. I do want to talk birds, but not quite yet. I want to
No
come
birds.
Back to the birds.
That question.
Yeah, but it's out there. But I have so many questions. I love the reading. It was wonderful to hear poems from the new manuscript out loud, and also to hear some of your own. Oh, this closer. I'm just waving it around uselessly. Okay, sorry.
The little things.
It is. I can see how this is better. So it was wonderful also to hear a little bit more about your own relationship to try to praise the mutilated world. Can you just talk about that a little bit more? And I wonder if you could just. It was really moving to hear that poem offered a vehicle for you to start writing again. And so what is it about that poem in particular in relationship to the elegy that offered that invitation to you of all the other poems you could have chosen? What was it that you really felt like this is opening a door for me?
I mean, I think there's a lot of answers. I think as a person, when someone says you must, I go, But also, I think there's also something in the word mutilated that I wasn't able to look away from. Sometimes, so I remember first reading that poem and not liking that word. Not wanting to think of mutilated as mutilated. And I think for me then, if something makes me uncomfortable or I don't want it to be true as a poet, that seems like a place to kind of to be. And then I don't know if you know the poem. I mean, how do you?
Yeah, we read it in class as well. And I first encountered it, as I'm guessing you did too, after September 11th.
After September 11th.
Yeah.
And there is this interesting thing, and I think it does say something about poetry itself, in that there are these poems now that we've come to recognize as the poems that people turn to and share and repeat when other language seems to fail. Right? And I think that poem is one of those poems. And then for me, I just think it's a profoundly beautiful poem that enacts its own argument through images. I think that's it. It starts with this, you must do this, and then it does it. Right? And so I think the challenge of that is for me as a poem, is something that I found myself returning to it again and again. How does he do that? And then I just got kind of mad at him because he died, and then his poem was there, and I couldn't write, and I just was like, okay, I'm gonna try. So I mean,
yeah. And then one of the things we talked about in class too was the title "Try to Praise the Mutilated World." That word "praise" is very different than your leading verb. I am trying to love the whole world. So can you talk a little bit about that shift between how you're thinking about the difference between praise versus like actual love?
I hadn't thought about it. So that's a really good question. I think I'm going to say two things. I think in a lot of ways, for me, and I'm not the first person to think this, obviously, the elegy and the ode are so much closer together than we like to think about. So if this is a poem about praising what is lost or what is mutilated, I mean, I think that is, I think that's what we do in the elegy. You know, we kind of offer that up. At the same time, to name that you love something then also makes one vulnerable to losing it. So there's always that kind of thing. And so, but I also think that love is attention, you know? And so I haven't thought about the difference between praise and love in that context, but I think there's something about, I think there's something similar about them when it comes to attention. And it's funny, you asked about my line, like, you know, I'm trying to love the whole world. I mean, I think in some ways, I think my world was feeling so small, kind of in the way that it kind of did in some ways during COVID, when kind of this practice started, that to say something like, it's impossible to love the whole world, so you have to bring it down to this small thing. But lately I've been kind of thinking about whole as whole, W-H-O-L-E, like the world as whole, that maybe I was doing something else in my head that I didn't, that had more to do with healing. I mean,
I mean, there's the riff on mutilated, a different word for it.
I misheard something recently, someone talking about small holes in the heart. They were, I misheard it as holes, small, W-H-O-L-E-S, just recently. And I thought, well, I'm just going to use the word whole. I'm just going to like, just intersperse them as at will.
One of the things
I'm not sure I'm answering your question.
No, you totally did. And one of the things we were talking about in class is the word praise, at least for me and a lot of the students, has an association with the act of writing poems. So the written act versus something that seems like an extrapolation, a moving beyond just what is written with praise versus internalizing an act of love, which, you know, I think could be seen as more profound than the act of praise too.
The external versus internal.
Yeah.
No,
Or in the written versus the emotional, maybe too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like,
well,
I'm glad you figured it out.
Well, and this was a question that was asked. The title of your collection is "I'm Trying to Love the Whole World." I had a few students who asked more or less, how's that plan working out these days?
I know, right? You know, I think getting up every morning and writing that line, knowing it's impossible, is the point. You know, it's not working out very well. You know, but I also think that again, to make something in the face of destruction, to make something in the face of despair, even if it is a failure, feels like a survival strategy at the moment. So yeah, I think it's working out in that sense.
I love that.
Yeah.
So all through the new collection that's forthcoming, but also we heard it tonight with so many of your, you make so many references to other poems and poets in your work, sometimes in reverential ways, sometimes in a mode of almost like a corrective or a small gesture that you're turning somehow, like with the Zagajewski poem. But can you just talk a little bit about how you appropriate those kinds of gestures from other poems and how you make use of that and how that fuels your own work?
I mean, I think reading is writing, you know, and I think for me, reading a poem is how I get into writing, and sometimes it's for. I mean, I think all poems are echo chambers, you know, in conversation with both, you know, with both explicitly known sources and implicit internalized ones at the same time. I hiked up Mount Holyoke the other morning before the snow really came, and I was listening to the New Yorker Poetry podcast because it was on, and it was it was this poem it's called something like Beagle, and it's about a music composer, and I was listening to it by April Bernard. It's a beautiful poem. You should check it out. She reads John Asbury, and then she reads her own poem, and it's about her not being able to remember this composer's name, and at a time when life was really hard, and like not being able to be moved by beautiful music, and kind of enacting that in the poem. And it was just like, I walked up the mountain listening to it, I walked back down the mountain, and it made me, want to try what she did. So sometimes it works like that, And other times, I think there's some poets I've loved so long that I'm scared because the lines are kind of in me, but at the same time, isn't the best compliment you can make a work of art to make more art out of it? Yeah. I mean, I think so. And, you heard tonight Heaney, Dickinson, Mary Oliver, Neruda, kind of the first poets I loved, the first poets who made me kind of want to write poems are ones I return to again and again.
Yeah, I loved how in your poem, Rereading the Tempest, how once you use that in your title, it affords, it opens the door to a different kind of discourse and diction in your poem itself, that suddenly you can ask questions without it seeming like lofty. You can suddenly ask questions about, the noble souls in there, and it affords a different kind of engagement and like path towards, I don't know, a kind of transcendence. Yeah.
I mean, I think there's always other voices in the room, other knowings in the room, and I think it's really interesting to see. And maybe I think this can be a failure of my own poems sometimes. Like how many things can you kind of bring together, right? But I think you're right. When you have something like Dvorak and the community pool and the Uvalde school shooting, I mean, that's one of those titles that does so much narrative work. Yeah. That then you can kind of just be in the images of it. And I think similarly, Rereading the Tempest, Seamus Heaney, who I've been reading a lot lately, talks about, I'm not going to get this quote right, but it's something like, since when is the beginning and the end of the poem actually where the poem begins and ends? This notion that, the poem is beginning, much before you've actually written it, and it shouldn't feel like it's over at the end of it, and I think there's something in that feels like it relates to what you're saying, like, and so, yeah, I mean, something like that then suddenly you have the tempest and you have the sea and you have the soul and you're in a Starbucks, and so how do those two things sort of collide? Yeah,
and it affords a kind of bridge work. Yeah. I wanted to ask you about that poem about the Uvalde shooting. I'm really glad you read it tonight. I mean, just to read the full title again, listening to the first movement of Dvorak's piano quartet at the community pool the night after the Uvalde school shooting. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about the decision to address the tragedy in the context of the community pool and a piece of classical music, and that it's a community pool obviously seems so important there, but also maybe to just extrapolate, to think if you could talk a little about how that poem might be representative of some of the strategies you might employ when trying to take on, yet another national tragedy.
And another one, and another one, and another one, yeah. I mean, in a real simple way, I think there are things that happen that feel beyond words. I mean, just, and certainly living in Texas and almost feeling like, I mean, everywhere, not just Texas anymore, but that, that we almost don't even notice anymore. So how do we begin to write about it? What to, and I think the thing that for me, it's one of those poems that actually started in a very, this had happened. I'm listening to music sitting at the pool, but But I think one of the things I'm interested in trying to create or capture in the poem is how can you describe the world in a way that shows you're walking around with that knowledge. And so, yeah, I mean, thinking about public and private language, thinking about public and private space, not talking about it per se, but landing there, thinking about what are what are the most vulnerable details and the most normal ones. I mean, there's something about normalcy that's happened with some of these things that how can the normal feel so endangered and so strange and so profound in those moments? I mean, I think if anything, I mean, you're just trying to write something, but that was kind of where that poem came from.
Yeah. And there's one of the things I was thinking about too is I think one response one can have after a deep, profound tragedy is, where does art belong in this?
Yeah.
And what can it possibly offer? But the premise of this poem is that the speaker is already deep in the need of finding solace in art. And not just that too, the way that the poem, or the poem describes the music that the person is listening to, and that affords a means of engaging with the tragedy too.
Mm-hmm.
That it is like the movement of children. Yeah.
It is, and
yeah.
I mean, and it's just I mean, it's unbearable to watch children. I mean, and to actually not look away. I mean, in some ways that was, I mean, that just felt true to that moment.
Yeah, I just have, I mean, I know, were you in Texas at the time of that shooting? Were you?
Oh yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
that's just an hour and a half away, isn't it?
Oh yeah, I mean,
San
it's
Antonio?
right down the road,
Yeah.
and so in many ways.
I'm interested in your, how the title does so much work, but then there's distance in the poem itself, and just that as a strategy, like playing with that sense of proximity. Not playing, that's the wrong verb, but being very seriously attentive to that idea of proximity and what might feel like too close and too direct as a way of addressing a shooting like that.
It's funny. I want to say like poems are smarter than us and also dumber than us in really important ways. I mean, if what you do to try to make sense of the world and of your own life is write poems, that's what you do when these things happen, right? But at the same time, I mean, what do you do with something like the word Uvalde, which is a beautiful Spanish word? It's this tiny little town, not far from San Antonio. It does feel closer, but at the same time, it's now become synonymous with the worst thing that's ever happened there, And I think, so yeah, it's conscious, putting a name like that in a title, knowing that that's what that means now, but also like resisting that at the same time, I don't really have an answer for it. I mean, I don't know how to write about these things. I think about Zayevsky as someone who didn't write about 9/11, but at the same time wrote something that put that moment in a much bigger history. Again, that poem begins much earlier than that and ends much after it.
Yeah, that's thank you for that. Yeah. So this is a question about form in relationship to grief. Two questions about form coming at you in just a second. This is from one of the students in the class. There are poems where the piece seems to be trying to extend a moment